In this video, I will break down how to find your financial retirement number in order to get you on the right path to financial freedom, so stay tuned. What's up guys, in this video we will determine your financial retirement number and give you some skills and tools in order to determine your specific retirement number, because each retirement number are specific to each individual. It depends on a lot of different things, so make sure that you stay here until the end and you'll be able to determine your exact retirement number. And that's what we're all about at this channel, giving you the tools and the skills in order to further your financial education. I'm Aatlas and this is the world of finance. So how much do you need to retire? Well, that depends on a lot of things. First of all, it depends on how much you think you can earn on dividends and interests. Furthermore, it depends on your living expenses and your medical expenses. And note that your medical expenses will increase over time as you get older. We'll cover the basics of the 4% rule in order to help you determine your exact retirement number. So before we get down to business, make sure to drop a like, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell as well to get notified every time I release new great content. Also, do make sure to take part in the conversation in the comment field. If you have any questions or suggestions, make sure to leave them down below and I'll definitely check it out. So the 4% rule is used to determine how much you can withdraw each year without affecting your principal. It's also called the safe withdrawal rate with good reason. And the main goal here is to be able to live off your interest or your dividends. So in 1994, there was this crazy guy named William Bengen, and he was a financial planner. He had this great idea of looking at the stock market return over a period, and he included all the market crashes. That means the market crashes of 1929 and so forth, and all the recessions as well. And in no point in history he wasn't able to find evidence that using the 4% rule or the 4% withdrawal rate would exhaust your main or your investment portfolio within 33 years. That's the difference of 10 years, kind of important, but within 33 years. So if you're planning to retire and you think that your retirement will last for around 33 years before you hit that final dirt nap, this is definitely a really great way to secure your retirement. But if you plan to retire before that, you should definitely be mindful that this study only documents that there are 33 years where there is no event of this occurring, that it would exhaust your retirement portfolio. You're probably wondering, what kind of holdings did he have when he did this analysis? He had two kinds of holdings. It consisted of 50% of the S&P 500 and 50% of the US government bonds. And what he did was he looked at 30-year periods to determine the maximum safe withdrawal rate, starting at 1926 all the way up to 1992. So that means that he took from 1926 to 1956 and so forth. And what he found, that in all these 30-year periods that he created, at no time the maximum safe withdrawal rate was higher than 4%. So this was how the 4% rule was born, and thank God for that, because now we have a way of measuring our retirement number. So the idea behind the 4% rule is that you should have 25 times your annual expenses invested, and once you have this, you can retire with a certainty that this will last you throughout your retirement. And an important thing to note is that you should withdraw 4% of your total investment amount. And you can do this either once a year or you can spread them out over 12 months. I would personally recommend doing it over 12 months, because in this way you get a better spread of when you withdraw them. I mean, in case of the stock market, it goes up and down, and if you withdraw 4% or you take the 4%, divide them out to 12 months, you have a certainty that you will get the average over the entire year, instead of, for example, withdrawing them accidentally on the worst month of the year. This will hurt your investment more. So in order to have a better safety and a less fluctuation on your investment, you should definitely withdraw every month Be sure that you take the 4% of your total invested amount, divide that by 12, and you should withdraw that each month. Of course, you should be mindful and aware of the cost of withdrawing. For example, some ETFs have an exit cost, and this typically is around 1%. You should definitely aim for something lower. The 4% rule actually accounts for inflation. So make sure to adjust accordingly to the inflation. You can do a fixed rate of increasing it by 2%, or you can do it by, for example, looking at the previous year inflation and adjust your withdrawal rate. Be sure that you take the 4%, let's say that amounts to $1,000, and then you take the inflation, which is 2%, so you take 2% of the $1,000 in order to adjust for inflation. You can of course also adjust for inflation by looking at the past year's inflation, but in general you can be quite sure that it's around 2 to 3 on average. But if you want to be really on point with this, you should definitely check out the past year inflation and adjust your withdrawal rate accordingly. Okay, let's go through how this works. And the market in generally goes up by 6 to 10% a year on average, and that's not counting inflation. But in this example, we will go with 6% just because it's the lower end, and we want to be clear on that this works whether the market's average return is 6 or 10% a year. So let's say you have $100,000. You take out 4%, which amount to $4,000, which leaves you with $96,000 invested. Let's say the market then the following year goes up by 6%, which amounts to $5,760, plus the $96,000 you have invested. That leaves you with a total of $101,760. So already here, the first year you withdraw 4%, but your principal actually goes up, or your total investment amount actually goes up. If you take out another $4,000, which were the 4% of the original invested amount, and you plus 2% for the inflation, that leaves you to take out $4,000 and $4,080 for that year, because you have now adjusted for inflation over the course of a year. So in the example I just showed you, you withdraw 4% once a year. If you want to spread out your risk, as I told you before, you spread the 4%, or that will amount to 0.33% each month, and you will actually spread out your risk, leave more installments in there. Your total investment will be higher, which means that they will probably benefit from being in the market. So if you want to spread out your risk, increase your savings, definitely take 0.33% out instead of 4% once a year. Do 0.33% a month, and you will definitely benefit from it. And be mindful that you need to stick to the 4%. You can't withdraw any higher. If you do, then it will have a really bad effect or a bad impact on the example that I just showed you. But if you stick to 4% a year or 0.33% a month, you'll actually end up with a larger invested amount when you pass on, that you can pass on to your children. So it's very important, stick with it, be rigorous with the routine, and make sure to always take 4% or less. Note that this rule does not include high risk investment. So this rule is actually based upon, as I told you, the 50% both S&P 500 and 50% US government bond. So it's really important that you don't go out and take high risk, high reward investments, because the 4% rule do not apply to these. And it's also important that you smash that like button if you haven't already. Remember to subscribe as well if you found this content valuable. Be sure to further your financial education yourself. I'll of course leave 2 free audiobooks down in the description, along with a little list of books that I find very interesting, books that I definitely suggest that you should read. So I promised you guys a bonus, so here it is. The problems, or more specifically, things to avoid when dealing with the 4% rule. So there are problems with the 4% rule, especially when we're dealing with a retirement period of over 30 years. Because as you noted, I told you that the study was done with different investment holdings over a period of 30 years. There's no evidence or things to support this theory if we go over 30 years, or 33 years to be exact. In his book, How Much Can I Spend in Retirement, Wade, PhD, CFA, looked at a 30-year safe withdrawal rate. And He used both the US and non-US market using the Dimson-Marsh-Staunton Global Returns dataset. And with the same asset classes of 50% stocks and 50% bonds that we saw in the previous study, he found that only 4 countries could come close to support the 4% rule. And these 4 countries was Canada with the 4%, the US with the 3.9%, New Zealand with 3.8%, and Denmark with 3.7%. The aggregate global portfolio only had a safe withdrawal rate of 3.5%. So we should actually adjust this, not call it the 4% rule, but maybe the 3.5% to be more accurate in the recent studies. So you can follow the 4% rule, but you should definitely take into account that only a few countries or a few markets follow this rule. And there are a lot of exceptions. So if you want to be more sure, and if you want to invest in countries other than Denmark, New Zealand, Canada, and the United States, you should definitely adjust your retirement number or your safe withdrawal rate to 3.5%. So Bengen's study showed us that using the 4% rule over a period of 30 years had 0% chance of failing. And that's really great if you want to retire and you want your retirement to last for 30 years. But what if you want your retirement to last longer? And here's the problem, and here's the risk. If your retirement lasts longer, if your retirement lasts 40 years, the risk of failure actually increases to 15%. And if to go even further, if you want your retirement to last for 50 years, the overall risk increases to 30%. So you should definitely be mindful of the risk if you want to retire early and if you want to retire with a period of longer than 30 years. So be mindful of this, especially for you young people who want to retire early, that there's a large risk involved if you want your investments to last longer than 30 years. And another factor to factor in, another word pun for you there, is that you should be mindful of the fees that you're paying. If you're paying a management fee of 1%, the 4% rule is scaled down to 3.56%. So be sure that you're paying the lowest management fee you can. I would personally recommend something like 0.15 or 0.05. That would be a great management or acceptable management fees. These are my personal opinions, and I'm not a professional financial planner. You should always consult one before making any large investments. If you want to learn more about how to manage money, how to invest, how to find the right ETFs, definitely check out the playlist linked above. It will teach you a lot of money management skills along with some investment skills, so definitely be sure to check that out. If you got value out of this video, please smash that like button. It helps me out with the YouTube algorithm and it allows me to reach more people and help them educate themselves. Also, be sure to smash that subscribe button, click the notification bell as well, in order to get notified every time I release new great content like this on financial topics. This is the World of Finance, and I'm Aatlas, tuning out.